Hey, I got a bone to pick.
Guys, I am so fired up.
Sleep deprived and all, I'm happy to be here.
You probably cut up your hot dog. You don't need it on a bun.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the DTF podcast here on the Field of 68 Media Network. It is Tuesday, September 10th. It is 10:48 in the AM, and we are now roughly 45 hours removed from John Fanta's viral moment. My man went in his backyard, put on a selfie camera, was wearing his Browns hat, was wearing his Browns t-shirt, and whisper screamed into a camera on his phone for about a minute and a half. And Fanta, I told you this before we started recording, I was sent that video roughly 385 times over the course of the last 48 hours. My single biggest claim to fame right now as a human being is the fact that I happen to know you. And, you know, it's kind of, you know, it's a big deal. It's gotten me to be able to cut the line at Costco here in suburban New Jersey before. So it's, you know, I can flex a little bit. Especially like my son too, like with his friends, he's like, yeah, my dad knows Fanta. You know, I got a little bit of street cred here in the suburbs.
I got fired up on Sunday, and hopefully maybe you get some discounts at Costco if it benefits the Doster family. That I'm okay with. But I can
Great steaks at Costco, Fanta. Great steaks at Costco.
Love.
It was very measured, John. You were very measured.
So thank you, Terrence, because you know I'm passionate about the Cleveland Browns. I love my Browns. I really do. But on Sunday, what we watched, what all of America was watching, because this was an isolated TV window for the majority of the country, was an embarrassment and disgrace to the sport of football. Now, the Browns have done this before in my lifetime, whether it be with Charlie Fry or Bruce Gradkowski or Deshaun Kaiser. I take that Deshaun over my current Deshaun. You could go right down the line of quarterbacks. Seneca Wallace, Jake Delhomme. I mean, we got some laughers through the years. Jeff Garcia was a Browns quarterback at the tail end of his career. Guess what? It didn't work out. And Johnny Manziel. We've seen it all. But last year, remember I was wearing a Flacco shirt on this podcast because we finally had somebody save us.
Wacko for Flacco, baby.
Right. Show us what real quarterback play looks like. So when you've gone to the postseason 2 of the last 4 years, your standards change. Just like on this pod, when we talk about college basketball programs and how things change when you start to make the NCAA tournament. It's different now. You're expected to win. There's different expectations on Alabama basketball than there were 5 years ago. We weren't even talking about them on this show. For me, my frustration lied in you're paying $230 million to a man who gives us every excuse about what's wrong, and he was the worst-rated QB in the entire league, in a league where did Bryce Young just throw another pick? Daniel Jones threw the ball to Van Winkle, the defensive end for the Vikings, and he walked into the end zone. And somehow Watson managed to be worse than that. So I was fired up on Sunday. A lot of people said to me, I've never seen you like that. I've never seen you get that upset. And other people said to me, wow, this has to hurt your relationship with the Cleveland Browns. I love my Browns. I'm just trying to help them out a little bit. Not that they're watching, but maybe somebody is. Because rip the Band-Aid off. My eyes are not lying. That guy is washed up and and not only that.
He gets you another charge.
He's a better quarterback, right? No, excuse me. He's a better person than he is quarterback. And he's a downright not good person. And somehow he's managed to be an even worse quarterback. Those allegations that came out yesterday, imagine if that was your daughter. That is disturbing and wrong. So this guy has no place in the NFL, period. So I got fired up on Sunday, not because of my love for the Browns, because I can't believe this guy's employed right now.
Yeah. And Deshaun Watson, he's like a hero in these parts in South Carolina. No longer that type of hero. Was a hero. He's just a weird dude who can't play quarterback anymore, and everything else got in the way. And without being a weird dude, he couldn't play anymore. So I'm not making that trade. I just think it's unbelievable that yet another thing comes out, and that there's no way for Cleveland to get out of it. The fact that it happened in Houston, as you were telling me off air.
I have to ask you both this though. And I'm asking this. You both know me. I did not expect that to carry the mileage that it did. I've ranted on the Browns before. I don't know if either of you have any theories on that, because I wasn't yelling and screaming. T.O., you just said I was fairly measured.
Yeah, I thought it was good. It was funny.
Yeah, it was. My favorite part about it was you were very clearly like in your backyard trying to let your rage out, while also like not letting the neighbors think that you're some freaking lunatic.
I know.
Sitting there screaming into your phone.
He didn't want the HOA to get too upset with it.
That was my favorite part about it. But my second favorite part.
You don't want to create neighborhood drama right away. You don't want to be the bad neighbor.
Give it a couple years, right? You got to wait until you're friends, until you're able to like look after their kids a little bit. My second favorite part was your lovely wife posted on her Instagram story something like, "Today wasn't the best day in the Fanta household." I was like, no, it did not look like it was a great day in the Fanta household.
Well, I did yell in the house. And we had some people over, and I think a couple people were alarmed at me yelling, but I was left. Yeah, I was very upset. I mean, they didn't leave. They stayed because the food was pretty good. I take no credit for that. My wife made a mean buffalo chicken.
What was the all right, break it down for me. Give me the scouting report on first NFL Sunday of the year. What do we have for the spread, Fanta?
So in New Jersey, everything's done bigger. Rob, you know this well. Like, it's just different. It's just a different state. It's different from Cleveland. It's just different. So she made a football charcuterie board. My wife, Vicky, is unbelievable. She made buffalo chicken dip, homemade buffalo chicken dip, 2 platters of it. It all went. We had like 10 people. I ate a little bit of it. I mean, I love it, but this is flying off the shelves. We had somebody brought some chicken and ribs. Those went. We had pretzels. The tub of pretzels that are the bigger pretzels only get a couple times a year. The UTZ. I love those things, but I can't. I only eat them like, twice or 3 times a year. Sunday they came out, and then around 3:30, right? So you're kind of in the mode of like you've had a bunch of those appetizers. Right around 3:30, we had the onion dip and the chips. You do the Tostitos. Tostito scoops. What are they? 20, 25 years old now. I mean, that's the best invention Tostitos ever made.
Yeah, they're incredible. The amount of queso you can get in one Tostito scoop. And you know what the best part about it is? When you have like the normal Tostitos, they're too big to like eat in one bite. You know what I mean? Like, you got to dip it, and then you got to like bite the chip, and then you get crumbs everywhere, and there's pieces of chips all over your shirt.
I have a theory.
You look like an absolute mess, especially if you've had a couple beers. You're an embarrassment to your family. They're going to send you home. Now the scoops, you just dip it in, boom, one bite.
Tostitos theory. Tostitos took off in the 01-02 Fiesta Bowl when Ohio State beat Michigan. Miami. When Ohio State beat Miami in that wild Tostitos Fiesta Bowl, that was also the national championship game. I just have a theory that propelled Tostitos to the absolute top. But we brought in pizza and wings. I'll shout out Casa de Pizza in Denville, New Jersey. They did a great spread. Pizza, wings. We had the whole lineup, and then 425 rolled around, and I ate a poop sandwich.
All right. Last question, then we'll get to college basketball for you, Fanta. Okay. It's an either or. You can only have one of these two things. Okay. The Browns win the Super Bowl, but your content career comes to an end. Or you broadcast the Super Bowl, right? You are on the call. You are the Jim Nantz calling the Super Bowl, but you have to watch the Steelers win the Super Bowl while you are calling it.
Oh man, that's really painful. the Browns are winning the Super Bowl.
The Browns win the Super Bowl.
But I have like a cubicle job.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to take the latter. I'm going to call the Super Bowl. I will call the Super Bowl, and I'll do it if the Steelers. I'll do it at the Browns' expense.
Okay. And while you call the Super Bowl, you have to have Sean Miller and Archie Miller right behind you.
Oh,
hey, Fanta, what about those Browns? When are the Browns going to get one of these?
Kick a dog while they're down, right?
Yeah.
Sean Miller. I said the New England Patriots don't rebuild, they reload. I was being sarcastic. It was not taken that way on X. Sean Miller, 9:00 Sunday night. So do the black and gold. Hang in there.
One of my favorite things on football Sundays is there will always at some point something's going to pop up. It's a text thread that I'm on, you're on, the Millers are on. I think it's Chris Mack's on there, and maybe Jeff Bowles. It's some kind of AFC North rivalry hatred going on in there.
Greg McDermott's been on. He's a Steeler fan.
Oh God, too many of them, man. Too many Steelers.
Well, I'm telling you, right? I'm telling you, Sean. This is why. Like, Steelers. I know this is funny, like this way, but you both know, T.O., you're in on this too this year. Like, this is why I can't bet against Sean Miller, because he's like wired. He's so wired to like beat the opposition. It's kind of why Miller and Hurley have a little bit of this at times. Remember when Miller said there's tears and all this last year? It was a long rant. Sean Miller is insanely competitive. There's no way Xavier's going to have another season like they did last year. There's just no way. They're going to be healthy. Knock on wood.
Front court might be the meanest front court. Just mean. I love it. I can't wait to see that one. By the way, subtle plug for a podcast that none of us will probably ever go on. Sean just did a podcast with Slapping Glass. And if you're a basketball hoops head, like, it was awesome. It was really good. High level stuff.
Yeah. Slapping Glass is really good. One of my favorite things.
It's one of my favorites. I've been a subscriber there. God, what's it been? 2-3 years, something like that. I mean, as soon as I heard about it, it's worth the money for a guy like me. I love it.
Yeah. It's a good segue to when we do our Big East preview episode for the season. I would love to rank the coaches.
We can do that.
That's hard.
That's a hard one.
We can do that. But that's not going to be fun.
That is going to go swimmingly.
Yeah, that's not going to be fun.
We won't publicize it. Only listeners get to hear it.
Yeah.
There you go.
How about Sorry. We talk about there's so many good coaches in that league. I'm looking up and down the rosters of all the Big East teams, and Ed Cooley's got like 7 of his 13 players are true freshmen of his scholarships. I kind of like it, guys. I kind of like it, especially if you can keep them
long term.
COVID year being done, kind of get a leg up. If you're able to retain them, there's some things you can do there, but it's not going to be pretty for a lot of the games this season.
Yeah, it's going to be rough. All right. So the concept of today's episode, I kind of like it. Our should we call him a friend? Is he a friend? Jeff Borzello?
Yeah,
is he a pal? Is he associate?
Pal.
A pal.
Phenomenal
He's a pal
hair.
of the pod.
Phenomenal hair.
Yeah, phenomenal hair. He released I don't know why he's still calling it a way too early top 25, but he's still calling it a way too early top 25 here in the second week of September. And what he did in this ranking was he put together a question for each of the top 25 teams that he had ranked. And I figured we'd go through and take the 10 most interesting questions and we'd try to answer them. I'm going to set 5 minutes on the timer for each one of these so that we don't spend 3 hours on this podcast. But if you guys are ready, I have some questions and I'm hoping that you guys can provide some answers. You ready for this?
Yes, fire away,
friend.
Fire away.
Number 1, Borzello's preseason number 1 team in the country, Kansas Jayhawks. Can Bill Self find the right perimeter combination? I'm going to you first, T.O. If you haven't heard by now, we have partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners, the viewers of the Field of 68 throughout the year. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can use bonus code FIELD, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. The best part, all you need to do is deposit and bet $10 of your own hard-earned money to be eligible. Here's how you make it work. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using that bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure that you use that bonus code FIELD when you sign up. BetMGM is going to have some fun offers available throughout the NBA playoffs. Bet insurance tokens, odds boost, and what I love, a nice parlay boost or two from time to time, as well as a ridiculous array of player prop bets for any sport that you could possibly imagine betting on. BetMGM is and always will be the king of the prop bet. So go download the BetMGM app, use the bonus code FIELD, and sign up today. And while I've got you, a quick request. The best way to support the Field of 68 content that you get for free is to engage with us. Rate and review the podcast. Like and share the YouTube videos. Tell your friends about us. It all helps in a world where the algorithm is king. And now, back to the show.
I think it's going to be hard because they've already had some injuries. That's one of the big things, right? Who was it? Moore broke his foot, and then Marco Jackson obviously had his injury. There's going to be a lot of plug and play, and like, let's just see what combinations work out. That's one of the things that's going to, I think, swing this game. But guard depth is going to be huge. They have the ultimate winner, but you need another guy to be able to at least keep the ship afloat while you're there. It's obviously a problem. I think they have too much talent for it to go poorly. And if nothing else, Zeke Mayo could bring the ball up and then turn into a two guard after he lets go of it, much in the same vein as Steph Curry used to do when he was at Davidson, for those that are old like me. So I like that. I think they'll be fine. They're super talented this year. And this is the reason, Bill Self's on a mission. He wanted to get depth, and I think he's going to certainly have that this year.
This is DeJuan Harris, AJ Storr,
yes,
Zeke Mayo, Rylan Griffin. And this is Bill Self, who's a Hall of Famer. To me, the question isn't whether or not Kansas figures itself out on the perimeter, because I think they do still have a variety of options. There probably is going to be an unhappy camper at some point, because you do have more guys than you have minutes and playing time.
Yeah.
But that's part of the game that you play. And when you're Kansas, you can play that game. Like, you could have more pieces than you have time available. To me, guys, I want to play devil's advocate to make this have a little bit more impact with Kansas. My question isn't about the perimeter. My question is, can Hunter Dickinson be the leader of a dominant season, of winning, of consistency, of number one caliber play or top three caliber play? Last year, Kansas was not good enough on the defensive end of the floor. I just felt that they didn't have connection, and I felt at times they were dogging it. That's got to change here this year. They got to have a mean streak to them. But to have your point guard back, and guys, AJ Storr was one of the best players in the Big Ten last year. He really was. I mean, and now year three, there's no reason to believe that he's not going to be that good again. And I think Mayo's going to be a perfect fit for what Self wants. And Griffin's been a part of a high-octane offensive system. I don't question Kansas's ability to score. I want to see this team show that they're the best team in the country. And I don't know if they are the best team in the country. In fact, I have more questions still about that than I do with an Alabama. But that's my thought process when I think of Kansas. I'm not questioning their ability to get perimeter play.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think that with DeJuan Harris, would you call him the ultimate winner, T.O.?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think that he's the kind of guy that brings that makes everything work around him, right? Because he could do all of the stuff that a lot of these other guys aren't going to want to do when they're kind of wired to score. And you don't really need AJ Storr to do much, or AJ Storr to do much and go out there and get buckets, right? You don't really need Rylan Griffin to go out there and do much more than, like, when you're open and you get a look at the rim, like, let that thing go, right? That's why he's there. So my biggest question is the Hunter Dickinson thing. I think you're right about that, Fanta. Like, is he a winner? Is he a guy that we're going to see him? Because this is what, year 5, right? And has he ever won at the level that maybe we would expect him based off of the accolades that he has gotten. He's had some really good seasons, but he hasn't won quite at that level for a guy that has been like, what is this, like year 3 as a preseason first team All-American. So I think it's a big year.
Would argue that since his freshman year at Michigan, like the supporting cast has kind of been up and down.
He did make a second weekend, right?
As a freshman.
Did. As a freshman. I would argue that. Last year's team wasn't necessary. They were pretty thin.
They were.
And they didn't get the performance out of certain guys that they thought they were going to. So I would argue that he's done his part. I think this year you'll see it kind of go over the top.
Yeah, and you know what? I understand that he's kind of like the villain in college basketball. I would like to see him get his flowers and get the success that he's maybe not the credit that he's deserved as a guy that's been like a 4-time All-American. All right, that is 5 minutes. We are on to question number 2 for Jeff Borzello's preseason number 2 team in America. Will Alabama be as effective offensively playing a bigger lineup that will feature the likes of Cliff Omoruyi, Grant Nelson, and Jaron Stevenson on the front line, as opposed to having Grant Nelson as your small ball 5? Fanta, we'll go to you first on this one. Alabama Crimson Tide. Do you trust them offensively, I guess?
Well, I do, because they have the best scorer in America and who I believe will win National Player of the Year in Mark Sears. I think Mark Sears is going to come away with National Player of the Year honor. This guy is just a stud. He's such a microwave of a scorer. And to me, they've got enough there. And I love the acquisition of Chris Youngblood from South Florida. Grant Nelson's going to give you double figures. Latrell Wrightsell can give you double figures. But Cliff Omoruyi is not a great offensive player, by any stretch of the imagination. He's just not. But they needed to upgrade defensively. And that's what they got with Cliff, and on the glass and in the toughness column. They got a lot tougher during the NCAA tournament. They played a lot tougher. But I think there's a lot of validity with the question of, can they be as good offensively? It would be hard to be as great offensively as they were last year, but they do have several returning pieces, and they did hit some home runs in the transfer portal.
Oh, yeah, they did.
I think it's just usage of Nelson and Omoruyi and that dynamic. Remember, Grant Nelson, I would say this, hype coming into the program versus what he was the entire season was not the same. He had some ups and downs last year for Alabama. So you wonder what happens with a regular offseason, right? And 2, I think they've got to figure out how Cliff plays in their offense. Their offense is going to have a different look, because Omoruyi's not some outside shooter. He's not some floor spacer. Now, they could take him off the floor and play smaller and put Nelson at the 5. Nate Oates is one of the best coaches in college basketball. He has become that. If you're not acknowledging him as that, then I don't know what you're watching. He is one of the best coaches in this game. I think that they'll figure it out. I do think they'll have some early growing pains. I'm fascinated to see how they navigate their schedule.
You know what? Are they going to be bigger? Sure. I still think they can play with speed because of the guy that has the ball. And that's really what it comes down to with this offense. I mean, you look at some of these different guys that are on the floor. Wrightsell can shoot it. Jaron Stevenson showed that he could get hot at times. A full offseason is going to help him. Grant Nelson got really comfortable in the tournament. And a lot of times you can see some of these guys that kind of pitter-pattered, had to adjust to the level of play playing in the SEC every night. As the season goes on, he becomes better and better and better, and then he peaked at the tournament. That is a great way to carry momentum into the offseason and into the next season. I love the addition of Aden Holloway, too, because he gives you some speed. If he's willing to let the ball go, he can learn a lot from Mark Sears in a year. And I hope that he's able to hang around and do some of those things. Don't be surprised if you see Cliff Omoruyi play at that 5 spot, that trail 5 at the top of the key, and he's manufacturing some offense out there. I still think they're going to be able to play with enough speed to make him dangerous. And him as a lob threat, dribble handoff guy will work. And then whenever they play some of these teams that they're beating 30 and 40 in the non-conference, and there's going to be a couple, there's not going to be a ton because they play a crazy good schedule. But let's see if Omoruyi throws a couple up from 3. Let's just see, especially early in the season. I would imagine with that staff And with some of the people on the bench, he's going to get at least a couple of opportunities to prove, hey, maybe I can do this.
Yeah, I will say this. One, Alabama is probably going to start 5 fifth-year guys with Mark Sears, right? So Chris Youngblood, Grant Nelson, Cliff Omoruyi, Houston Millett is a senior, Jaron Stevenson and Aiden Holloway are high ceiling sophomores, right? Two, you have 4 guys on this roster that shot better than 40% from 3 last season. Grant Nelson is a better shooter than what he was and what his numbers show you by the end of the year. One thing Preston Murphy told me last year when we were down there was Grant Nelson has not figured out how good he is yet. And I think that he kind of did towards the end of the season. And 3, Nate Oates has never had a team that ranked outside of the top 35 in offensive efficiency on KenPom at Alabama. And he hasn't had a team that ranked outside the top 40 in 7 years. They're going to be really, really damn good offensively. It's going to happen. And I think that adding Cliff Omoruyi in there is going to mean that instead of being a team where you got to score 115 to be able to win, they're going to be a team that can sometimes win some games with their defense because you got a rim runner and a lob threat and a shot blocker. They're my preseason number 1 team in the country for a reason. Yeah. All right.
And Rob, so I know the timer's up, but I said they might have some growing pains early. I mean that by they might have some time they're going to have some time to figure it out. Yes. Like I'm not saying they're going to be losing games. One of the things I think Nate did a very nice job with is they have UNC Asheville, Arkansas State, McNeese State. They play 3 games in the first week, and then they load up with their schedule. And their non-conference schedule is absolutely ridiculous, but I love it for the game.
Yep. And those mids you just mentioned are all they're all really good. Arkansas State is going to be good. McNeese State is going to be good. We saw how good UNC Asheville was last year. All right. Question number 3. The team going for a back-to-back-to-back. T.O., can Hassan Diarra make the step up to the starting lineup? Can he be UConn's point guard? That's Borzello's biggest question with UConn.
It's a question. It's certainly a question. I think it's going to have to be something by committee. I love Hassan Diarra's toughness. I love the fit with Dan Hurley, but Tristan Newton knocked down shots. Hassan Diarra, I'm not sure he's been the guy that's proven that yet in his college career. I do love him beside Aiden Mahaney. Aiden Mahaney can really score it, and Hassan Diarra is a real tough guy. He just doesn't bring that same level of threat from beyond the arc to where you can extend out the defense. That's going to be interesting to watch and see how he's able to progress in that manner. If he's able to shoot the basketball, it's going to be a lot different. If he can't do it with consistency and some of these elongated offenses, he's going to give you a weak point in the offense, much in the same vein as Andre Jackson did a few years ago, where you could just sit a guy in the middle of the lane. Sean Miller alluded to that during his Slapping Glass podcast the other day. You could just sit somebody in there and you can convolute a lot of things up. Diarra is going to have to knock down at least 33 to 35% at the minimum in order to keep teams respecting him and make him that threat from beyond the arc. That scares me a little bit. He has all the intangibles. He has all those toughness factors. He gets in there. He does all those right things. But in today's modern game, you're going to have to knock down shots at the very minimum at 33%. If he can do that, he's going to be able to stay on the floor for 25 to 30 minutes a game if needed. If he can't, he's a liability on that end of the floor, and that scares me.
Hassan Diarra is the toughest guy in that UConn locker room.
No doubt.
He's made of steel. He is just a tough, you-know-what from Queens. So he will be ready to go. I think he's up to the challenge. Mm-hmm. I believe that he will conquer this. I do think that there will be times where teams are going to dare Connecticut to shoot it. I think that this is where the development of Jalen Stewart, solo ball, and company is very important for this team because those guys have been around the block before. Didn't play a ton of minutes, but Stewart really showed as the season went on that he can knock down that shot. Liam McNeely obviously is going to be used right off the bat, and Karaban could go through stretches where he's sometimes hot, sometimes cold. He's got to be consistent, just warm throughout the season. I think he can be. But when it comes to Hassan Diarra, I think you can make both these points. Number one, Hassan Diarra is not Tristan Newton, and that's okay.
Yes.
Tristan Newton's an all-time UConn guard. And number two, UConn's not asking Hassan Diarra to be Tristan Newton. They're asking Hassan Diarra to be the best version of himself and to be a guy that when teams dare him to shoot, he's a capable shot maker from time to time.
Yeah, I don't think that he's going to be asked to be in the point guard role the way that you would think of a prototypical point guard, right? If you kind of look at the way that UConn's roster was last year, I think that I would expect Aiden Mahaney to kind of be in the Tristan Newton role where he's got the ball in his hands, he initiates the offense, and then at the end of a clock, he's the guy where they kind of rely on him to try to go get a shot. They can't create anything in the offense that they run, right? I think we're going to see Liam McNeely kind of playing that Cam Spencer role, so to speak, where he's running off of a lot of screens and being the floor spacer and kind of being someone where you get him in a DHO, you get him off a pin down, maybe get him in a ball screen and let him kind of make some decisions. Alex Caravan is going to do Alex Caravan stuff. Samson Johnson is going to be your rim runner. And I think Hassan Diarra is going to, it's a different build and they're going to have to tweak the way that they use him. But I think he's going to be used kind of the way that Steph Castle was and Andre Jackson was, as someone where in transition, you get the ball to him and let him see if he can go create something. And if not, then he's going to be a little bit more of an off ball weapon. Now he's not the same vertical spacer that Andre Jackson was, and he's not as big and physical as Steph Castle was. So they're going to have to kind of get creative with that. But I think that staff can get creative. My biggest question with UConn is it's simply just the player development, and it's not just
you're just gonna have to get some second. You're gonna have to get some second or third side options for Diarra in order to get him downhill to where at least you're getting enough of a closeout to where he can use his physicality and athleticism to go. Like that's the thing, and he doesn't have to take a lot. He needs to take one or two a game, but he needs to hit one of them.
Yep.
Like that's the biggest
he shot
thing.
36% last year. No, I think that he'll be able to make enough, and it's his fifth year, and he's a tough kid and he's competitive. My biggest question with UConn is just like, how big is the step forward that Jalen Stewart takes? How big is the step forward that Solo Ball takes? How effective can Samson Johnson be being a guy that's going to be asked to play 25 minutes a game? How good is Terrace Reed going to be? That's my question with UConn. All right. Question number 4.
I say all that. I say all that. Like you're right. He shot almost 36% from three.
Yeah,
but with like those added minutes, like it's going to have to.
Yeah, a lot of them were like you said, he was left wide open and he made enough that he became a threat, as opposed to him being like the guy that you want running off of. Like he had very high percentage looks, is I think the way that I would probably phrase that.
But those are going to continue though.
Yeah, they will.
Yes, that's just it. A team's going to pick their poison defensively, and he's going to get those looks. When UConn was struggling, okay, teams were giving certain players wide open looks, and it was there's a reason why you're open. The thing about Diarra that doesn't get talked about enough, he's a really smart player. Mm-hmm. His IQ's through the roof. Yeah. So he knows if he is struggling, he'll go to the rim. That guy's not afraid of anything. He doesn't get the yips. He will never get the yips. Like, he is not afraid of anyone, anything. I think that was such a gem of a transfer steal from Texas A&M by her.
Yeah, it was. It was the little known steal.
Yeah, Buzz Williams could use Hassan Diarra right now.
Yeah, he could. I remember T.O. when UConn got him, I specifically remember you on this show being like, "Now keep an eye on Hassan Diarra," and I was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever you say, T.O."
Tough kid.
You got the W on that one. Yep. All right. Question number 4 is with the number 5 team in Borzello's preseason top 25. I actually agree with him on this team being a preseason top 5 team. Will Gonzaga be better defensively without its best defender? And just for context, last year they finished 5th in America in offensive efficiency on KenPom, and they finished 51st in America in defensive efficiency on KenPom. Fanta, how do you feel about the Zags?
I feel very good about Gonzaga. I think that they are a national championship candidate and are going to be in the mix. Do I think that they'll be better defensively? Well, I don't know about that. I mean, and that's a big question, because if you're not, you can't simply win everything 97 to 91 when you play the elite. You're going to have games where you're going to have to get stops on the defensive end of the floor. But you know, Ben Gregg, I think that there's promising signs for this kid. And I like some of what what I've seen from him thus far. Graham Ike has to step up and be a dog now. He's got to take things to the next level with a full off season. He understands what Mark Few wants. They're going to be able to outscore a lot of people, and they're going to be able to get by with that. But they have to develop that backbone, and it's absolutely correct. Anton Watson was invaluable to the Zags in the way that he defended. They brought in this Tarleton State transfer, Emmanuel Innocenti, who is known for his defensive capabilities. Tarleton to Gonzaga, the caliber competition they're going to be playing in non-conference, and then in the NCAA tournament, it's a different monster. Ryan Nemhard is such a composer. He is so good at managing a game, and sometimes your best defense is your offense, and your ability to control the game offensively, get high percentage shots, and make those shots. But I do think it's a very valid question, because I think that's why, if you asked me for a faith meter on some of these teams that are maybe after, I'll take Alabama and Kansas out of the running, right? If you ask me who I have the most faith in, if you put a collection of, let's just say, UConn, Houston, Gonzaga, and Baylor, and even Iowa State, if you rank those teams defensively, Gonzaga would probably be 4th or 5th of those teams. Houston and Iowa State would be better. UConn, I'll put better right now, because they've won back-to-back national championships in Dan Hurley's Masters system. Where Gonzaga, this is a very, very good question about them. We just have to see how things align. But look, does that front court have the options to be mean and to defend at a high level? Yeah, but we all know this in this. T.O. better than anybody. He played at a high level in college. Defense comes down to connectivity and effort. You've got to want it. And this Gonzaga team's got the leadership, but they've got to be better on that end of the floor. Last year, they were a turnstile defensively at times.
I thought it was funny that the person that Borzello singled out, Innocente, didn't score against IPFW in his last game of the season. And is Gonzaga going to be okay? Is Few going to be okay with putting a guy who's not a threat offensively out on the floor for elongated minutes, even though he's an elite defender? You got a lot of guys that are really good on one end of the floor. Will they be just as good? I think, you have to step up. And I guess Ben Gregg, who's shown good things, he's going to have to be a connector and communicator on the defensive end of the floor. So we shall see. Do I think they'll be better defensively without Anton Watson? Probably not, but their firepower offensively is as good as there's going to be.
Yeah, I do think that the injury to Steele Venters is going to hurt, because it's going to take away
hurt defensively.
No, just hurt overall, because it's going to take away a little bit of their lineup versatility, in the sense where I thought that there were lineups where you could put Ajayi and Venters out there at the 3 and the 4 together, and you maybe would be able to match up a little bit. I do think that as much as I like Ben Gregg and Braden Huff and Gonzaga kind of figured that part of it out down the stretch last season, you are in a situation where you're kind of looking at playing 2 bigger, slower defenders, one of whom is going to have to guard somebody on the perimeter. And when you look at some of the best teams in America, you don't necessarily have 2 slow-footed guys where Ben Gregg is closer to a 5 than a modern 4 to me. And you're going to have him running around, chasing somebody around on the perimeter. So I think that losing a little bit of that lineup versatility is something that could hurt them. But I don't think it's necessarily going to matter. We're looking at a team that is going to be like a top 3 offense in the country. And if they're top 50-ish defensively, they can win a title.
Yeah, they can. Really good point.
Next one, T.O., I'm going to you first on this one. Can Cooper Flagg prove that he really is the best player in college basketball this season?
Can he? Well, he'll certainly have the opportunity. Will he? Comes down to a lot of things. I think defensively, right out of the gate, he's going to be elite. Is that funky jump shot going to shoot high percentages? I think that's what it comes down to when you look at Cooper Flagg. I'm a believer in the shot. I think he's got terrific hands. He has excellent feel through his fingers whenever he does shoot it. It is an unorthodox release, but I is he the best player or is he the best in 5 years is the big question.
I think that he will impact winning as much as anybody in college basketball this season, if that makes sense, right? Like, I don't think he necessarily has to be the guy where you look at him and say, you're going to get 22 points a game out of him, right? Like, I think if you're just looking at raw stats, you're probably going to be more impressed with what you see out of like a Mark Sears or what you see out of someone like an RJ Davis.
Sure.
But I do think that with what he can do defensively, with his ability as someone that can kind of blend everything together on that end of the floor, with the fact that Duke has put the pieces around him and the players around him and the role pieces around him that I think make a lot of sense in terms of, Mason Gillis is a 3-and-D guy, Sion James is a 3-and-D guy. Malik Brown is more of a defensive player than he is just like a 3-and-D guy, but he still shot, 37% from three last season at Syracuse.
Yep.
I think Kaman Maluwak is a guy that it might be like the Derek Lively kind of a thing that you see from him, where he really makes his impact in the second half of the season as opposed to the start of the season. But he's another guy that has, I think, fits next to Cooper Flagg. I think it's a long-winded way of saying, I think that the roster that John Shire put together is really smart when it comes to taking advantage of the things that Cooper Flagg does really, really well. And I think that if you know what you're looking at, you're going to be really, really impressed with the way that Cooper Flagg plays. I don't know if that necessarily means he'll be National Player of the Year. A lot of that's going to depend on, will Duke be able to get to the point where they are a national championship contender versus a top 10 team? Because if they're like a top 10-ish kind of a team and Mark Sears is averaging 23 points a game and Hunter Dickinson is averaging 19 and 12, and those are the top two teams in America, like, it's going to be very hard for Cooper Flagg to win National Player of the Year if he's the best player in the country. But
I love your point about like his stats aren't going to be as loud as Mark Sears, because what we're probably looking at with Cooper is 17, 9.5, 5.5, 2.5 blocks and 2 steals, where Mark Sears is going to be like 23, 8 and stuff like that. It's still great, Fanta. However, a lot of people just stop reading the stat line at points and rebounds. That's my point.
Well, if he's averaging 18, 9, 5 or 6, 2 and 2 a game.
15. Well, okay, so take 3 points off. You get what I'm saying, though.
Yes, but that's
unbelievable.
That's probably not far off from what Zion Williamson was averaging. I mean, I have to go back and look.
Zion, I want to say was 22 points, 9 boards, 2 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. I think that's what it was.
So look, this comes down to the jumper. If he's able to make perimeter shots, then yes, he'll be in the mix. I believe he's already in the mix. He could win National Defensive Player of the Year. I bet you that there haven't been many freshmen who have been able to accomplish that. Here's the other thing. There's been 3 freshmen all time who have won National Player of the Year. Okay, it's Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, and Zion Williamson. You combine that, the history against Flagg, with the amount of fifth-year seniors that are still in the sport, the odds are stacked against him. He's the best prospect in basketball. He's the best freshman in basketball. He's one of the 5 or 6 best players in basketball. I don't think he'll win National Player of the Year. I also think the question's totally valid, and it's going to be a huge debate point and a huge talking point. Where I do get concerned is I guarantee Cooper Flagg is going to be a point of daily discussion on many debate shows across the country. We have to be real in how we talk about him and not sensationalizing things if he has a bad game. He's going to have a bad game.
And we're going to sensationalize it. That's just
we're going to. We're going to. But us three. But T.O., and Rob, you are too. But Terrence, I know you're protective about this stuff because we're talking about kids here.
Yep.
And I don't care how much money they're making. He's a freshman in college. He's going to have a bad game. People are going to go crazy. There's some hot take artists in our world who are probably going to go crazy. Folks, if you're out on this kid, you're a clown. He is a spectacular talent. He's going to be a successful professional. He's going to have a long NBA career. I don't know what he will be yet, Like I was trying to think of a comparison. I'm not making a comparison because I hate comparisons because the 75% of the time they're wrong and the other 25% were like, we'll see. He will not win National Player of the Year, and that's not a bad thing. It's the reality of being in a sport where Mark Sears, R.J. Davis, Hunter Dickinson, Alex Caravan, Caleb Love, go right down the line, are all in this sport.
Yep. Well said. All right. Question number 6. T.O., I'm going to you first on this one again. Okay. We're going down south. We're heading down to Auburn. We're heading down to an ex-Furman point guard. Is JP Pegues the answer to Auburn's point guard dilemma?
Oof. That one's it's going to be a dramatic step up in competition. SoCon has been good over the last few years. JP was at his best when he was third, maybe fourth option at Furman. Mm-hmm. And he was really good at times. Do I think he's going to be? Man, that's a good question. That's a good question. I think it's going to be hard for him. 18-4 for a Furman team that was very ho-hum last year. They were just kind of figuring themselves out. They did lose some guys to injury, sure, but he's going to have to be extremely good. And I'm not sure he's the same kind of creator that they've had at that spot in recent years. JP's much better where he gives the ball up and gets it back, to where some of these other guys, the Jared Harpers that have had extreme success under Bruce Pearl, some of these other guys, Aiden Holloway, when he had good games, like they're shot creating guards who do it for themselves. JP's got to give it up and get it back. So can he be that guy? I don't know. That's a tough one. I do like some of the things that you can do with Tahad Pettiford to inject some athleticism and quickness there. If not off the bench, then play those two guys right beside each other. You're going to be really fast. It's going to be tough, because I think that's a lot of responsibility on Pegues' shoulders for a guy who is best when he gives it up and played in a really elaborate offensive system at Bob Ritchie. And Bruce Pearl does a great job offensively. They run a lot of unorthodox. It's like an off version of a flex with skip passes and up passes to an up screen, an uphill ball screen, and things of that nature. They do a lot of really cool stuff, but he's not a shot creating guard in its purest form with the ball in his hands. He's more of a get rid of it, get it back, and then attack a closeout, that kind of thing.
The one thing I will say, and then I'll pass it off to you, Fanta, is that I agree with a lot of what you said. I just think the situation is a little bit better for a guy like that, T.O., because you still have Janai Broom out there, right? And I think that Janai Broom is going to kind of be the anchor. Everything I've heard coming out of Auburn about Miles Kelly is that, like, this dude has come in and has earned a starting spot, or earned the minutes and earned the shots that he's going to get. I don't know if it's necessarily a starting spot, but I really do think that there are enough options there where it's not going to be everything on JP's plate. You just need a guy in that role that I think will be more efficient and a better decision maker and a better shooter than what we've seen out of it was Aiden Holloway, and who was the guy that was there that they brought Aiden in over? I can't remember who it was. We made fun of him too much 2 years ago. Either way, we'll keep it moving.
Nightmare Fuel?
Not yeah. Who was in the backcourt with Katie Johnson, the transfer from Eastern Kentucky? I can't remember who it was. I'll bring up his name right now. Go ahead, Fana.
Wendell Green.
Wendell Green. There you go.
Wendell Green. Yes, Wendell Green, who I saw at TBT playing for the Auburn team this past summer, and he led them to a win, and then it went the other way the next game. Okay, so I think that
sounds like Wendell Green, Fanta.
Sounds like yes. I don't want to rag on him, but yes. So I took a look at KenPom, and Auburn's had a top 40 offense for the last 5 years. That's not in doubt. Bruce Pearl's going to have an offense that the question is it a top 40 offense? Or does it become like last year when it was a top 10 offense in the country? That's the question here. So Auburn, to me, this is what separates the national championship contenders from a really good second weekend type team, which I think Auburn is that. I don't think that they're a title-worthy team. Maybe they become one. Maybe they are one, and maybe they prove me wrong in that conversation, but I don't see it. I think that they're a top 3, top 4, because I got to tell you guys, I'm going to call it right now. The SEC is going to have a surprise. There's so many good teams in that league. One of the teams picked outside the top 5 is going to end up in the top 5, if not top 3. So for me, when I look at, I do agree with Terrence. I think the X factor here is Tahad Pettiford.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce is good with freshmen. He figures out ways to use them the right way.
And he lets them be them. Sorry, go ahead.
And he lets them be them. Pegues has to, the expectations can't be through the roof for this kid, but it's a great question because he's going to be the point guard. Can a point guard be 3rd or 4th option? Maybe. But he's got to create for the top 2 or 3 then and make things happen. Now, the 2, 3, 4 slots on this team are interesting, right? You bring in Miles Kelly from Georgia Tech. It's a good pickup. Denver Jones, is he going to make a leap? And then Chaney Johnson, likely at the 4 here. That to me, those positions, or Chad Baker-Mazara, who's back, has that role at the 4, who's a good player. And then you have an All-American in Janai Broome. But, sometimes your point guard is as good as the 2, 3, 4 slots are on your team because that's who he's distributing to. Auburn's they're a good to really good team. Pegues, I think, will be able to handle the workload provided that he gets some help there from a quality number 2. But I don't think that JP Pegues is going to be, out over his skis in this role. I just think that Bruce has to be realistic with what he's asking of JP Pegues because JP Pegues is not an All-American guard. He's not. He's a good player. If he's Auburn's most important player, though, I don't know if Auburn's best player is Janai Broome. If you're relying on Pegues to be your backbone, you're probably not a top 15 team.
I have him 6th in the SEC.
Auburn?
Yeah, I had him 9th. I had him 9th. Went back and looked at it. I moved him up to 6th.
You could be a top 15 team in America, and you can be number 6 in the SEC this year. That's very possible.
But you're still making the tournament. Yeah, 6th in the SEC. You're still making the tournament.
Yeah. Speaking of transfer point guards in the SEC, let's head over to Fayetteville. Fanta, is DJ Wagner poised to take a step forward this year for Coach Cal at Arkansas?
Well, I think that the question answers itself in that, yes, I don't see him taking a step backward. I think that he's only going to evolve as a player. When we look at DJ Wagner, obviously there were high expectations coming in, but Rob Dillingham and Reed Shepherd stole that show. But DJ still had a good year. For now, the shot making piece is the key. Because if he's going to take a step forward, he can't shoot 29% from 3. You can't be a 28, 29% shooter from downtown. But he averaged 3.5 assists per game, and he was a double-figure scorer as a freshman. And for most freshmen in college basketball, you would sit here and say that that's pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
But can he take a step forward? Cal is giving him the keys for all intents and purposes. If not the keys, he's getting half of them, right? I mean, he's going to be a huge piece for this team to have success. So he's got to show it, but I don't think that the expectations are out of control for DJ because he's on the same team as John L. Davis, who's still going to be the lead driver of this car, averaged over 18 points per game, has been to a Final Four, and was a basket away from being in the national championship game. DJ will take a step forward, but Nelly Davis is still, to me.
That's the biggest concern I have that's the biggest concern I have for Arkansas, right? Is that this needs to be Nelly Davis's team, and DJ Wagner needs to be the complement that does the things like, set other people up, move the ball, be a defensive presence. Like, I wish that we could just sit DJ Wagner down and let him watch every second of basketball that DeJuan Harris has played over the course of his career and say, this is the stuff that you need to do. And if that is who he the role that he embraces being, I think he's going to have a really, really good year, and Arkansas will have a really good year. If he wants to come in, T.O., and be like DJ Wagner, the guy that was at one point the number one player in the class of 2020, was it 2024, 2023, class of 2023, like, I think that you could be in for a season where you're kind of butting heads in that backcourt a little bit. I think DJ needs to accept that. If he can accept being a role, then I think he takes a huge step forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, guys, let's not sugarcoat it. From February on, like, it just wasn't his. I mean, he had a couple of good games. He played well against Arkansas. What was it, March 2nd? It's about it. Like, I agree with you. He needs to settle into that role of being that ancillary piece who can really get to the rim. But once he gets there, he finds other guys. He's just been wired a certain way, and his physical measurements indicate that he should be wired a different way. Because if he's not shooting the ball well and he's an attack the rim guy at he's listed at 6'4", that's generous. That's very generous. He's got to get in there and look to pitch out or look for some of these guys who can finish above the rim. And so far, he's been kind of a square peg, round hole. Like, if he doesn't have it, those toys that kids play with the shapes. Like, he just square peg, tries to put it in a round hole, but instead of trying to find a different one, he just tries to jam that square peg in there. And it's like he just did it all season long, and it never got better. Go ahead, John. Well, you looked anxious to say something. You
might be able to try the square peg with John L. Davis on your team.
That's a good point. If he's settling it, but he's also got to understand, like, I get into that painted area. If I don't have a dunk or right there at a layup, I need to be spraying out. And imagine if that would have been more under control last year. Not to say that Kentucky wasn't super exciting last season, but that all being said, like, I think an adjustment in his thought process, that's going to help things. I also think he was. I said this when we saw him play at Peach Jam, guys. I thought he was a little overrated coming in, and I thought a lot of it had to do with name, rightfully so. But he needs to kind of adjust his mindset. And I say all that, he could go and average 18 points and shoot 38%, and I'll have to throw my tongue over my shoulder.
But the question answers itself. Like, he's poised to take a step forward.
Yeah, of course.
One might argue he's in a better situation now. I think that
I would argue he's in the exact same situation.
Yeah.
John L. Davis is
there's less of a national, like,
yes.
It's not. You're not coming in and buzzer's about to go off here, but you're not coming in as like the number one player. You are now the second chance guy, right? And instead of being in the spot where it's like you're coming into the season, it's like DJ Wagner, you're coming into a season that's like Coach Cal, Arkansas, Nelly Davis. So, like, there's a little bit of pressure on, you know what I mean?
It's been alleviated.
One take. I think with the roster constructed the way it is, I'm not saying better. I think this has a chance to be one of John Calipari's tougher teams that we've seen in a while. Toughness wins games. And he's got a couple of dogs. Jonas Edey, remember, that was a nice addition. And him, Big Z, Trayvon Borzello, that in Cal's first year at Arkansas, he's got to establish toughness. His teams have been soft in some big spots in recent years. John L. Davis is not soft.
Mm-hmm. All right. Question number 8. What does a post Zach Edey world look like in West Lafayette? I think it's really interesting. And Fan, I'll hand it off to you first on this one. I think it's really interesting that you lose the most impactful player, the best player we've seen in a generation in college basketball. And Matt Painter did not go in the portal. He just said, all right, we're going to run it back. We're going to figure this thing out. Trey Coffin-Wren, Cam Heide, Miles Colvin, someone's going to take a step forward. We'll figure this thing out with what we got. That's not normal in 2024 and 2025 in college basketball. I'm very curious to see how this thing plays out for Purdue. And spoiler alert, I'm very bullish on Purdue as well.
Well, let's start with this. officials will be able to breathe easier when they get out to West Lafayette at Mackey Arena. Players on the floor will be able to avoid having to look around the towering tree that is Zach Edey. It might be easier for some fans to see the entire game because of how towering of a force Mr. Edey is and was, and we wish him the very best at the next level. But, I think that we're all wondering this. I even think that Matt Painter would admit to you, and this is where I love Paint. He's so truthful. He kind of he doesn't really give a damn what question is asked of him. He just is going to tell you how he feels now, which I love. And when you get humbled like they did in the NCAA tournament in that unfortunate event, and then go all the way to the national championship game, that kind of puts things in perspective of you can't get too nerve-wracked at different people talking to you about different things that you've seen. Matt Painter's seen it all the last 2 years in college basketball. Mm-hmm. I think he would tell you he's wondering. But here's what he knows. He knows he has one of the best backcourts in the country, and he could have a guy who ends up being as good as any guard in the country, besides maybe Mark Sears. And even then, Braden Smith is that special. And if you follow Purdue's accounts or even follow the Purdue guards, all I have seen all summer was Braden Smith and Fletcher Loyer working out and getting better and just putting in the time and putting in the work. That's a Purdue guard. That's the Purdue way. Cam Heide is poised for a major breakout, and I think we will see it because I think Purdue, one, is going to give him shot opportunities because shot allocation is going to be very different. The question is simple. How does a Miles Colvin, how does a
he's huge.
Yes, he's huge. How does a Trey Kaufman-Renn? How does a Cam Heide? How do those guys handle more shots in a game?
Yeah. It's hard to win the Kentucky Derby with Shetland ponies. So, look, they're good. They're good, but they were really good because they had that big fella in the middle. And Braden Smith's really good. I think he's really talented. I don't know that without that interior presence and always worrying where Zach Edey is, how well that's going to go whenever they're trying to attack the rim. And for that matter, guys, I can't remember the last time Painter just went all in on, I'm not going to play a huge person.
It was 2019? It was the Carson Edwards year. And he just went all in on chucking up threes. They led the nation, or they set a record for most three-pointers attempted in the Big Ten that season. And it was like a 1-year blip between Isaac Haas and Trevion Williams.
So this was 2020?
2019.
Okay, Trevion Williams was on the team then. So 2019, they went 26-10. The following year, were they 16-15? Mm-hmm. I have a lot of respect for Fletcher Loyer and Braden Smith for what they are able to wrench out every single bit of talent out of their bodies. Every single bit. How are they going to get the defense to move with guys that aren't necessarily the quickest, the fastest guys? And Fletcher Loyer had great games. He had great games. But a lot of his points were the result of the ball going inside and then that ball getting skipped around quickly and then him getting open shots. He's not necessarily one of these guys. I love his game. I think he's a super solid piece. He's going to play in Europe for a while after he's done at Purdue if he so desires. I'm just worried that without constant rim pressure, how's it going to go? And do they have such little faith in Will Berg? Is Daniel Jacobson going to be ready at that skinny state that he's in? How's it going to go? I do have all the faith in the world that Paint's going to be able to draw stuff up to get that ball moving quickly to where they're going to at least be able to attack closeouts. How are they going to be able to finish against those closeouts? That's my biggest concern. I have them fourth, and that's giving them some benefit of the doubt that they're going to be tough, hard-nosed dudes. I could actually see it going a little bit worse for Purdue.
Yeah, I just bet on the player development there. I think they're going to find a way to be good enough, and I think that they're going to be a top 10-ish, top 12-ish, top 15-ish kind of a team in the mix for a Big Ten regular season title when it's all said.
Do you think they're going to be top 10 to top 12 all year?
I mean, they're going to be somewhere.
I just don't see it. I just don't see it. Like I'm trying to see it because I like Purdue. I love paint. I just don't see it with those players.
Yeah, I just bet on the pieces getting better.
Yes.
That's it. Okay. It's the same thing. T.O., it's kind of like it's similar to UConn in the sense where if you're looking at the piece, like just at the paper, it's kind of like this is not a top 10 team, but you just kind of say like they're going to find a way to get better. And I'm not saying that I don't think I'm ever going to have Purdue circled as like, okay, I think that they're a Final Four contender. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to put them in the national championship tier. I just think that they're going to be good and solid and well coached and good enough offensively that they'll be maybe top 12-ish is a little bit bullish, but top like 15 to top 20 all year long.
UConn just has pop. They just have pop.
No, Creighton has pop.
Creighton has pop. I don't know that Purdue has any pop. Like the biggest thing that they came at me last year was, hey, Miles Colvin, he's an athlete. Okay, fine. What, he averaged 3 points a game?
That's
like they don't have any pop. Look at UConn's roster.
Did you see Cam Heidi's dunk in the Final Four? Or were you too busy calling a Hornets game?
Okay. Sorry, Cam Heidi's your guy. If Cam Heidi's your guy, we're
a little.
I think my point's going to prove itself. Hey, look, I do think they'll be top 25 because Paint's going to have them there. I just that top end is not where it was last year.
Well,
they made the national championship game, so I'm splitting hairs here, but like I just don't think there's no pop.
It's impossible to not take a step back when you lose somebody as good as Zach Edey, and there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to take a step back. But I just don't think that like we're looking, and I don't think you're saying this to you. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I just don't see them being like having it be a 16 to 15 season. I think we're looking at like a 20.
No. 20.
Yeah, I know you're not saying that. I know you're not saying that. I know you're not saying
20. It's just they've set such a standard, and I'm arguing against that standard. So 20 to 24 games is kind of where I'm at with them.
Yep.
So this is something that's not being talked about enough. I know the timer's probably already gone off, but in the Big Ten,
hours ago.
Wait, in the Big Ten this year, you have the schedule pairings. Okay, and not everybody's going home and away. Now, you've had it before, but with the West Coast teams, I think it makes a total difference. Purdue away games. Illinois, they don't get them at home. Iowa, don't get them at home. Not an easy place to play. Michigan State, they don't get Michigan State at Mackey. They have to go to East Lansing. Oregon, they have to go to Oregon. They have to go to Washington, who they should beat, but it's. I'd actually rather go to USC than I would have to go out to the Pacific Northwest this year. They get UCLA and USC at home this year. Indiana, they have to go to Indiana. Michigan, they have to go to Michigan. Now they get both those teams at home, but they have to go to Rutgers as well. Their Big Ten road games are hard. I am going to be paying close attention to that. That is going to impact conference standings. Where you have to go and who you only get at your building. That's going to make a difference. Mackey is a really hard place to play, but I just listed it. They don't get Illinois at Mackey. They don't get Michigan State at Mackey. They have to go to Oregon, who looks like a top 25 team, if not better. So they're the Big Ten, that's a challenging schedule for Purdue. There's one really good thing in there. There's 2 Purdue-Indiana games this upcoming year. That should happen every year. That rivalry is real. I can't wait. What I am excited for is to see Assembly Hall on fire again.
Well, that's actually a perfect segue. Because
Jakari Harris, son of the big dog. He's a good player. I like him at Purdue. We'll see if he can make an impact in year one. I just don't see. Sorry, guys. Purdue guys, I love them. It's hard for me to see it. It's hard for me to see it.
What's your segue?
Last one, perfect segue. There's 2 teams I wanted to hit on here, and we can kind of fit them both in because I think that it's kind of the same conversation. The question was, will all of Indiana's pieces fit offensively? And also, how long will it take Mark Pope to piece things together there? So I guess my question to you, I'll go to you first on this one, T.O. Indiana finding a way to be able to play not 17 big men at the same time together, or Mark Pope finding a way to get. The big question I have with Kentucky is like, is it like a best defensive 5, best offensive 5? Well, who are you betting on to put things together for more likely, Kentucky or Indiana, T.O.? That was a shitty question, but you know what I'm trying to say.
That's a good question.
It's a good question.
Asked
It's just
shittily is
it was
what I'm
worded
saying.
poorly.
Yes.
It was worded poorly, but it was a good question. I'm a little bit more bullish. I think Miles Rice can shoot it better than what he shot last year. That shot's smooth. A lot of the shots that he took last year at Washington State were difficult. I think he's going to shoot better percentages. I like Kanan Carlisle. I think he's a good player. Mackenzie McTaco is going to be even better this year. I like their pieces, and I think Malik Reneau is as good as advertised. I'm considering making him preseason Big Ten Player of the Year. Considering, I'm still working on it. Considering, I think he's in that mix. I actually like Kentucky's pieces, and I like Kentucky's pieces along with Mark Pope's system. They're going to be able to play with pace. They're going to be fast. They're going to be able to shoot it. I think Andrew Carr is a guy that comes from Wake Forest that can step out and shoot the basketball. He's going to fit that perfectly. He's tougher than you think. And then Kirk Creesa and company, like Jackson Robinson's a good shooter. Those guys can get hot. And I like that they're older, they're better, they're bigger. And I just feel like Pope's going to find a way to get that figured out. I like both squads. I would say Indiana's more talented. I think Kentucky's pieces fit together a little bit better.
Fanta?
Well, Indiana, who I believe is going to be a top 20 team, but what makes them that next level team is the big question that you just mentioned, and that is perimeter shooting, which has been the age-old question in the Mike Woodson era. But now is the time in Bloomington. Now is the time for all of this to come together. I think it will to some degree. But if I'm picking upside, I'm taking Mark Pope. And I'm taking Kentucky because of the depth. Because I feel like I got a lot to choose from with this team. I think that Jackson Robinson was already a star, but he was at BYU playing at 10 o'clock at night. And I don't think the nation knows enough about him. That guy's a killer. He's going to be a pro. He is a tough, I don't know to what degree, but he's going to be on that radar. With
think
Kentucky,
about like Lamont Butler and Otego.
Lamont Butler, Otego away, tough guards who are hard-nosed and defend at a high level. I think what you're willing to bet on Kentucky is to what degree you believe in Kirk Creesa really working out. Kobe Bray, like Indiana, if they had Kobe Bray, I'd be saying Indiana. But Kobe Bray was a great pickup. The question for Kentucky is Kirk Creesa, what version am I getting? And number two, how does that front court mesh?
Yeah, look, I think if you're asking me which roster I would rather have, I think it's a different question than which team do I think the pieces will come together.
I agree with that.
I would rather have Indiana's roster right now. I think that their point guard situation is better. I think that Mackenzie Mtako is going to be the most talented kind of like big wing that we have. And I'm buying Oumar Ballo and Malik Reneau over the kind of like three-headed monster that Kentucky has inside. I think that Luke Goody is exactly the kind of role player you want. I think Kanan Carlisle is going to come in and be like this electric off the bench kind of a scorer, right? And Trey Galloway is just like a solid, been there for 38 years. You know what you're getting, like just a good player if he's going to be your fourth or fifth option. But I just don't think that we're going to see an Indiana team that plays Mbako where he needs to be played, which is kind of like as a four. I think what we're going to see is Mbako, Malik Reneau, and Oumar Ballo all playing like 28 minutes together. And I just don't know how that works. So if you're asking me which one I think is going to work out better, my guess is that it's going to be Kentucky because I have more faith in Mark Pope being able to find a way to get creative with those pieces and make it all come together. But I will tell you this, Kentucky, Indiana, Louisville, Purdue, all of these teams being together is something where it's fun. And I think that we should find a way to be able to get, maybe that'll be the next Field of 68 showcase event is to have all four of those teams playing an event together. But listen, guys, we've been here for way too long. Fanta, I'm rooting for the best for your Browns, man, for your mental health, for your wife's sanity, so that you don't get kicked out of the HOA. And T.O., it's always a pleasure, man. Next time you come on, if you're not going to wear deodorant, you're going to have the sweaty pits. Just don't give us this look too often, man. Look at that. There you go. That's how you know my man's been working.
I work out every day, baby. I work out.
Yeah, there you go. Always a pleasure, fellas. This has been the DTF podcast. We'll see you guys again next.